All right, here we go. I'm going to try and replace Denny's energy. He's on with us right now. He's on another space. He's going to join us a bit late. But I'll kick us off with our intro. So THORChain is the world's leading Bitcoin DEX. You can swap 13 different blockchains across 41 different pools without using bridges or wrapped tokens. You can check it out at swap.thorchain.org. Anyone in the world can use THORChain. There's no account to open, no KYC required, and privacy is a human right. THORChain has two tokens, Rune and TCY. The fees for swapping on THORChain are paid in Rune, and that's where the yield comes from. The fees are deducted from swaps, so you don't need to own Rune to trade on THORChain. 10% of protocol fees go to TCY token holders. So remember to stake your TCY tokens in order to collect that yield. There's no block rewards on THORChain. The protocol fees are real money paid by real users. And the Rune token is deflationary. Right now, 5% of the fees are burned. THORChain is more than just a DEX. It's a programmable layer 1 with the ability to create smart contracts and apps. And this app layer is being developed by Reshare. If you need help with THORChain in general, join the THORChain Telegram group. The links for those are on THORChain.org. Get this showing there. And also on THORChain.org, you can join our email list. And it's probably the best way to stay up to date with everything going on THORChain. We summarize articles, videos, posts from Twitter. So it's a good one-stop shop to stay up to date on THORChain. And just a reminder, everybody, this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. The THORChain community does not endorse or condone illicit activity of any kind. And, with that out of the way, Denny's just on another space right now with Dash Joel. He said he'll come a bit later. And,
well, usually we start with you anyway. About the website, about marketing, about, swap.thorchain.org. Which, by the way, we need another name than swap.thorchain.org. It's just a little bit of like a mouth. I mean, it's self-explanatory, which is nice. Like, here's what it's called, and also the website URL. Like, it's kind of nice in that way, but like, we can't use THORSwap. That's already used. And so I'm not sure. We should have like a different name for it or something.
You mean like come up with an actual new URL or a new nickname?
A new nickname at the bare minimum.
Well, we usually call it STO.
Yeah, but then no one knows what that is.
I know. You're right. I know.
It's like, what is it? Nobody even knows what STO even like stands for. It's
you're
like
right.
a kind of
You're right. It's an inside baseball thing. It's only us in the know that knows what it means.
Yeah.
I don't know. This was a thing when we're picking the URL, what to call it, and it was just like we kind of went back and forth a bit with JP. And he's like, I was just thinking swap.thorchain.org, and I'm like, all right, fine. I feel bad because like we didn't have any original kind of good ideas on what to call it. So
we got to call. I mean, THORSwap would actually be a perfect name for it if it wasn't already, taken in a separate project and all these things. Actually, it's quite a good name. I don't know. I don't know what to call it.
There's a bit of history there too, so it's not the same.
Right. Originally, I wanted to call it, like before we even built it. This is like a while ago. I had the idea of just calling it something like cheapswap.com, right? Or just cheap swaps, to just like get rid of the Thor branding entirely and just have it be, and just have it just be a thing on itself. Yeah. Because like the whole point, at least from my perspective at that time, maybe it's like shifted and changed over the time span, but like at the time I was just like, we want a swapping interface that is like cheap and because most interfaces use SwapKit or something like it, and they're charging another 5 bips or 7 bips, or in some cases even 100 bips, in some scenarios. And we just wanted to like have a cheap way for people to trade, on THORChain without like, incurring additional fees that were like really not necessary,
Yeah.
Especially once like memless became a thing and like, okay, now we can support all of the web UIs or all the wallet UIs instantaneously overnight. And we wanted a cheap way to do it and blah, blah, blah. And so we just never really thought, I mean, if anybody in the community or anybody in the chat or whatever has any ideas, like throw it around and let us know. But
well, the nice thing is like we should be able, if we wanted, we can just make a bunch of clones of the front end.
Yeah,
and
we
like, just
could.
get new URLs and just try it and see how it goes. Maybe something catches on. Maybe something gets picked up or whatever.
Yeah.
We could, in theory, we could have 100 different sites if we wanted.
Which as a common marketing kind of strategy, right? Is you create A/B testing, right? You create two different websites and you have the same marketing around both, and you just see which gets the most clicks or the most, in our case, maybe it's like revenue versus clicks or something. I don't know, whatever it is, like it's totally possible. STO1 and STO2 and or whatever, right?
Yeah. Like bitcoinswap.com or something, like what people actually search, and that comes up. And we can even take off like the THORChain branding. Like it's just like a no-name website even. Totally. I'm definitely down to try stuff like that. It should be minimal cost. It shouldn't cost much to try it.
One day.
Even if it's just
sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, even if you just like try it for a year, right? Just get the domain for a year type thing.
Yeah. It costs nothing, right? Almost nothing.
Yeah.
But I interrupted you because I just injected with some nonsense question. But
no,
you were going to talk about like what's going on with the website, what's going on with the marketing.
It's funny you brought it up actually, because we're just going over. So now that the website's the .org or the homepage website's been live for a while, we have Hotjar on it, which is like a creepy crawler, kind of like it tracks where people's mouses are clicking, or they're clicking their mouse, and kind of how far they go down the page before they leave and stuff like that. And so now we're getting a bit more data there, and it's been a few months, and so we're talking about rearranging things on the homepage. So if we start seeing some updates on the homepage, that's why we're trying to like maybe move things around, make it better, try and hold people's attention longer type thing. So probably won't do that for a couple more weeks, but we're starting to look at that and think about it. We're still plugging away at making everything AI friendly. We're starting to score much higher now on these AI readiness sites. Before we were like 0. Now we're scoring like pretty consistently in the 70s, 80s, even 90s, depending on which site we use.
Yep.
So just slowly adding that stuff. And for STO, I know actually we got to talk about this, Chad. We got to add in Discord like some channels or something for support tickets.
That's a good idea actually. Should we create like an entire new like category, and then within that create sub channels or whatever?
Yeah.
Should we call it just like swap interface or swap.thorchain.org, and then have like one for support and one for whatever else we want to do?
Or just call it help desk.
Help desk. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we can talk to Sam Yap and Koitsu about it. Maybe they'll have an idea how to organize it, because they're the ones going to use it, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's better to have them tell us. But we need to get that done, and because I think they're pulling their hair out a bit right now, like how to organize these, like because they're still coming in right now that we lost THORChain community Discord. And so I've been looking at how to do this. Like, so I think we're just gonna basically just start doing something and see how it works, and then iterate. If it's not working, we'll try and make it better. But right now, I think we'll use Chatwoot. And it's open source. So, because there's like closed source options out there, but like I don't want to use it because I don't know how they're farming our data, right? And if people are using like putting in transactions and their wallet addresses and stuff like that, want to just know it's not being farmed or used against them. So Chatwoot is open source and been around for a while, so I think it's probably decent reputation. And then we can build a custom. So it'll be like a chat bot, like a chat box in the corner of the site. Click on it, go create a ticket, it'll connect you with someone in Discord right away, one of the mods. So there'll be no AI questions. It'll just be immediate, create a ticket. And then we have to build a custom integration from the site to Discord so that Samyap and Koitsu and the mods can manage the tickets in Discord. And when they reply in there, it'll pop up in the chat bot on the website. So for the user on the site, everything will be saved in their cookies. Right? They won't have to create an account. They won't have to do anything. So as long as they don't clear their cache, everything will be there.
Yeah.
And apparently it shouldn't be too hard to set that up. The devs are working on it right now. maybe we can even have it done in the next week. I don't know. We'll see. But I think I'll need your help, Chad, like an admin in Discord
Yeah.
to be able to help.
I can do that.
Approve all that stuff. And then that's about it for major thing. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we are working on 3.20. There was a bunch of issues around some migration stuff, and there were some TSS related issues that Maya discovered on the Maya protocol that were just kind of like, that they caught there, just we're bringing them into our side as well.
Like they pushed the update on Maya first before THORChain.
Yeah. There's some issue or some bug that was discovered within their own thing, but obviously they're forks of us. So there's whatever bugs they find, there's a decent chance that it affects us as well. And so they pushed the change and they tested it on Maya first to make sure it's all good. And then we have a clone of that PR, right? That code change that we're merging, which I think just got merged like an hour ago, or something like this. And then there's one more PR that fixes some migration stuff that we've been all part of like the exploit we had from a month ago or whatever it was to like kind of fix up some things there. And so we should be putting out the post to vote on accept or like doing the vote for 3.20 like probably today or tomorrow. And then a week after that, I think we'll push out the actual update out there a week or two.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then so once that vote goes through, the update will happen pretty shortly thereafter, and then we can unpause the churn and get churning going in, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So probably still like 2 weeks before we can churn?
Yeah, whenever 3.20 gets adopted, which should be a week at most 2, and we can unpause the churn and carry on. We've also been seeing some like block time issues lately, which is interesting because like historically we haven't had issues with this, but we have recently. There was one issue with a bug in a smart contract that was just kind of like looping when it didn't need to loop, and it's kind of thrashed the chain in a matter of speaking. It was just a small bug, easy to fix, patch fairly quickly. And then there was another situation where some individual was just basically DOSing the chain. They found some sort of bug in another smart contract and was like literally like created like 9 different addresses and just started to like hound the chain to cause issues. It wasn't profitable or anything like this. It was just just some kind of a DOS attack on the chain.
I don't understand that. I don't get it. Is it just is this like a firebug arsonist thing? Like people just like screwing around for the sake of screwing around?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I don't know all the details in that sense. If that person was here in this room, then maybe they would say something different. Like I have no idea. But generally speaking, yeah, it's like it's sometimes people just kind of get off on causing arson. You know what I mean? Like in a matter of speaking.
Yeah.
And so they started like thrashing the chain and causing slow block times. And again, it wasn't like that big of a issue in the sense of like it was easy to find, easy to patch. It was done within a few hours, I think a couple hours or something like this. But it's just annoying, right? Because we've just been dealing with mainnet issues, and to like add on top of that stuff, like, this kind of thing is just like, oh God, so annoying. We're trying to get the network back, to its like much more stable kind of mentality. And then we just have this additional external things that's kind of constantly causing more issues. Yeah. It's really quite annoying,
Is it possible that maybe this is just somebody's like, use AI to write some code they're trying to
sure absolutely
some kind of trading algorithm, and it's not really working very well, and they end up spamming the network type thing? It's just
no, I mean, I don't think so. From what I haven't looked at the data directly myself, to be fair. I've spoken to people that have, and their kind of take is that this was done intentionally. This was not a bot accidentally making it blah blah blah. This was something malicious that had malicious intent. Even though it wasn't like a profitable thing, it's just like, this is going to be fun, and just fuck with the chain or whatever.
Maybe our competition trying to slow us down.
I don't know. I mean, to give Near and Chainflip and our rest of our competition credit, like, none of us want to see the other one burn, right? I have no ill feelings towards Chainflip, and even if I wasted my time, not wasted my time, but even if I spent my time looking through Chainflip's code for potential exploits.
Yeah.
I wouldn't exploit them. I would actually, if I found an exploit, I would actually tell them honestly, and not even ask for necessarily a bounty reward for it, necessarily. Yeah. I presume they're the same. We don't really have like inter-team communications, to be honest with you, but like, I don't have no reason to feel ill towards them, and I don't think they have any reason to feel ill towards us. And I think we're all in the same. We all kind of I think we all kind of respect each other, right? Just because we all know this shit's hard.
Yeah.
This is not like we're all doing very difficult things, and the last thing we need to do is just like, go like scorched earth mentality and just start attacking each other,
Well,
overtly.
That might be true for Near, but like, Chainflip was dancing on THORChain's grave last year.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Either.
It was pretty bad.
It's pretty unprofessional.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
To be honest, like to my knowledge, Chainflip has never been hacked, right? And they haven't had the experience or know what that's like. It's a learning experience when you go through it. We've been through it a few times.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why they haven't been hacked, is because, they don't have much liquidity to hack, right? They're not as big of a honeypot as a THORChain is, because we've got like 5 times the TVL that they do or something like this, right? Not to mention that they came into this space after us, and they had the benefit of learning from our mistakes, or the benefit of newer advanced technologies like newer cryptographies that didn't exist when we were first building THORChain, but they came a few years later and they had more options, right? And they're really in a better space to build what they were building. And so they have like a lot of advantages just because they're second, you know what I mean? In a matter of speaking. So, I would say, I hope they're never attacked or hacked or whatever. Like, I don't want to see any protocol for that matter that happen. But like, it's a very sobering experience as a dev, as a founder. It's a very sobering experience. It's not fun at all. And like, you have, your heart kind of goes out to other protocols when you see it happen a little bit differently, because you just kind of like walk through those shoes and you know what they're going through in a matter of speaking, And the same thing with like, Aave had an issue where they had like, $200 million debt issue, and they just were able to pay it back just to like asking the world to make donations effectively, it works quite well for them. And I congratulate them on that in some sense for that. So again, it's very unprofessional, I would say, for that Chainflip to be like dancing on graves. I have never danced in anybody's grave. I don't think I would ever dance at anybody's grave unless it was like somebody that was like begging for it, because they're such a publicly big asshole, or something like that. But that's like an extreme scenario. Yeah. I even though they were kind of dancing on our graves a little bit, like, it's not a good idea to do, because, we're still in the game and we're still highly competitive to them. And like, not to mention that they caped, right? Like, here's the funny part. It's like, when we were building all our lending stuff and whatever else, right? They were publicly stating that like, we're just going to keep things simple and we're just going to do swaps and like, we're not doing anything else. And then and now they're doing lending in a different kind of way, that not the same way we did it ours, of course, a more traditional sense, and a lot of their innovation that they're using came from us, came from our innovations. Honestly, I couldn't even name you something that Chainflip has done, any original innovations that Chainflip has actually done. I couldn't even think of one example. It's not concentrated liquidity, right? It's not like Aave style loans. It's not AMMs. It's not streaming swaps. It's not like, there's nothing about them that's like actually innovative. It's just like taking things that other people created and then stitching them together, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not like, dogging on them in that way, but like, I just would remind them that like, they exist because we exist, right?
Yeah.
If myself and JP didn't do what we did and fought the hard fight in the super early days where there was less technology and less like availability, like they wouldn't even exist today, right? Yeah. And the same thing for Near, and the same thing for like, I would even say the same thing for like LayerZero, for example, right? Like we set the stage and we created this entire like subcategory in crypto. So a little respect, if you don't mind. If you don't mind, like we may be competitors in some sense, but it doesn't mean you can't be respectful towards each other.
Yeah. I still remember that LayerZero space you did, talking to the guy, asking some honest questions, being curious to learn. And you kind of, I don't say called him out, but kind of like indirectly pointed out kind of some holes in it. And I think what you pointed out was ultimately how they how they failed recently.
Effectively, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when I pointed it out, his answer was the DAO will figure it out. I remember that. And I was like, that one stood in my brain. It was like, the DAO? like the DAO can barely even vote on anything. Like DAOs are notoriously difficult to get like a decent voting, block of people or tokens or whatever. And you're not going to rely on them to figure out really technical, complicated questions that 98% of them have actually no idea what you're even talking about or how to implement or solve a technical challenge such as what you're describing here. Like, it was just a very hand wavy. We have no idea how to solve this problem. And I'm just like, well, I'm pointing out that you have no idea how to solve this problem, which like at some level, I'm okay with it as long as you're honest and clear about it, right? Like if they had just come out and said, honestly and clearly, I would have give them a little bit more space. But they were kind of coming out like, oh, we're decentralized and we like making all these statements. I'm like, I'm gonna have to push you back on that one. If you're gonna kind of say something that I deemed in that moment to be a little bit dishonest, I'll have to push back on that.
Yeah.
But if you just said it like, oh, we're like as decentralized as we can be, here's our problems, then I wouldn't have made a stick of it. But whatever.
Yeah. I'm just gonna look at the chat here, Chad. See, this guy had a question. Thanks to, I don't know, funny videos. Your question is a bit too general, I think. But we'll ask Chad this. What does Chad think about Frost?
Frost, the cryptography kind of implementation of Schnorr?
I guess so, yeah.
I guess so.
Veka. I don't know. Can you maybe expand on your question a little bit? Just make sure we're answering the right question.
Yeah. I mean, unless there's more detail that comes in, and I can't even see the chat because
you can't see it?
No, I'm like testing out this like Riverside desktop app instead of the browser, and there's like nothing. The chat is like empty. I'm not seeing anything at all. So I guess it's
really
new and buggy as hell.
Oh,
there it is. So if you don't know, just to clue people into the context of the question, there is a certain type of cryptography or certain kind of like I'm trying to keep this like non-technical, but like type of signing algo called Schnorr, and there's an implementation called Frost, and which, by the way, that's what Chainflip uses to sign their stuff. And Frost is actually like a really good, relative to the rest of the market, it's actually a really good option. We're actually thinking about using Frost ourselves on THORChain. And by the way, we might even use Chainflip's implementation of Frost and borrow back from them. That may or may not happen. We're looking into it now. But yeah, Frost is actually a really good thing to use. The problem is that Schnorr is not really supported natively on things like, Bitcoin and Ethereum, like all the main kind of chains. Those are all what's called like ECDSA. And they're not really compatible, except Bitcoin had added support for something called Taproot later in life, which does support Schnorr style signatures. And so we might be using Frost for that purpose. And you can also on Ethereum, because it's a smart contract, L1, you can create a little bit of a shim layer, so to speak, between the ECDSA signing and the Schnorr signing. So you can create like a smart contract that you do a Schnorr signature with the contract, and the contract, so to speak, does a ECDSA sign with the chain itself. So, and the reason why we're considering of using that is because Schnorr is like really one of the best cryptographies that we have now in this industry in some ways. And that's largely because it's like very, very, like it's relatively speaking, it's very, very simple. And if something is very simple, it has very small surface area. If it's a small surface area, it's easier to secure. right? It's less kind of nooks and crannies to look into or orientate yourself to like find nooks and crannies that can be orientated against each other to cause some sort of exploit or problem. So we are in the process with the THORSec team to investigate different libraries that exist in the open source libraries that exist in the sphere for both DKLS and for FROST/Schnorr. And we're going to be implementing, at least one of those in the near future. The problem is that one of the things that we'd like to have in our world, in THORChain world, is we have to have something called identifiable aborts. And a lot of libraries don't support identifiable aborts. Now, let me quickly explain what that is. Identifiable aborts is that when one person is intentionally screwing up the key sign or key gen process of trying to sign something or generate a new private key, we can identify who is aborting the system and say, hey, you, Kenton, you midway through this process, you just ditched us and ran away and broke the whole thing. We need to be able to identify who it is so we can slash that person or that node or whatever and, carry on. If we don't have the ability to do that, it's not like the end of the world necessarily, but we prefer a situation where we can identify who of our nodes is causing the problem on our network.
That's what key sign failures are, right? When we see those?
Yeah, key sign failures, key gen failures, we see those. And those happen naturally. That's nothing that happens more or less all the time, but we just want to be able to identify because if there's one asshole that's doing it, especially in a malicious context, we want to know who that is so that we can get them the hell out of our network, right? The thing is that a lot of the people, the companies or systems that use these systems, like Frost and whatever, they're not decentralized protocols. They are centralized companies oftentimes, like using it for internal purposes, like Coinbase, for example. And they don't really care about identifiable aborts because all the entities that are signing are trusted. They're all friends. We all know each other. We're all best buds, right? But because for us, we don't have any methodology of identifying who is a node and who's our friend and who's not our friend, in a sense. And so we have to identify them in another way to make sure that they're not going to be malicious in one form or another. So we have to look into this and we might have to, change a library. We started to do this for DKLS. I think in the end of 2025, we hired Silence Labs to generate Silence Labs is one of the premier DKLS implementation labs in the world, really, to make an edit to DKLS 23 to have additional rounds of signing just so that we can identify who was the malicious person or people or maybe it is a person just made a mistake or whatever, lost the internet or whatever. Who was the person that kind of screwed up the process, So we were working on that with months, back in 25, so that we can replace GG20 with DKLS. But yes, the THORSec team is actively a part of this process. We are having meetings and discussing this, from time to time, and we're going to be actively working to actually add in Frost and add in DKLS when we can. So Frost would be probably the top priority in the sense of what's most valuable to the protocol. Get Bitcoin and Ethereum and all the EVMs on the Frost base signing, because that's the most secure in our, at least in my opinion. And I think a lot of cryptographers would probably agree with me on this. And then when we can't use Schnorr signatures and we have to use ECDSA signatures, we use DKLS because that's simpler than GG20's implementation. It's a little bit smaller surface area and it's easier to secure for that reason. And then and hopefully just get rid of GG20 entirely, or possibly use GG20 for the whole multi-sig thing we were talking about a month ago, whatever, where you have a multi-sig, but each one of the signing keys, a 2 of 2 multi-sig, but each one of the signing keys is a different cryptography. One might be DKLS, one might be GG20, and you need both of these things to sign in order for the multi-sig to send the transaction. And the benefit of doing this is that you become really secure, because even if you find an exploit in GG20 or you find an exploit in DKLS, it's not enough. You got to find a 0-day in both cryptographies at the same time, which you can imagine is a lot more difficult than just finding in one.
Yeah.
Whether we actually do that or not remains to be seen. I think the goal for right now is just we have to implement Schnorr/Frost. We have to implement DKLS. So let's just get that done as like a stepping stone in the right direction. And then once we're off of GG20 entirely, we can come back to the table and have a conversation like, is it worth the time, energy, technical complexity, so forth and so on to do this whole multi-sig, idea?
What if we did, like we have a handful of tokens on Frost, a handful of tokens DKLS, handful of tokens on GG20. There could be one vault for each token, but instead of having different vaults, we've got the 3 different cryptographies. So fine, somebody might find an exploit in one of the cryptographies, but only those tokens would be affected. And the other 2, in theory, would be safe. It'd be kind of like maybe a happy medium between going from, instead of having multiple vaults, we just have multiple cryptographies, but be mono vault.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's like a vault per cryptography rather than a vault.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's almost like what you're saying, and in other words, saying is you're diversifying your portfolio, right? Like if there's one downturn and one, it doesn't take them all out, which there's benefits to that mentality. You can't do that necessarily with GG20 because you can't have a single vault for GG20 because you can really only have like 20 nodes signing in a or technically a little bit less than that.
Okay.
So you couldn't really do it in that case just because there's too many rounds of signing, there's too many like complicated kind of computationally intense things happening, which is why we each one of our vaults is like 20 nodes in a per vault scenario. DKLS is a lot more efficient, and you can have 100 nodes in a single vault, and it signs, probably just fine. You could do like DKLS and Schnorr, right? You could theoretically do that. But if you do the multi-sig thing with the 2, then you kind of get the best of all the worlds, right? And you don't lose any money if you expose DKLS to some 0 day, and you lose like half your funds theoretically, right?
Yeah.
In this scenario, you wouldn't lose any of it because you have to break both of them, which is even harder than breaking one.
Yeah. Well, and like speaking of the Frost implementation, it is being implemented already with Monero, right? That's going to be Frost. So it
is, but the Frost implementation for Monero is like kind of a customized. It's not the standard Frost. It's like it's a kind of weird one-off Monero specific implementation of Frost. So technically we would have XMR Frost, and then we'd have like generic, ECDSA Frost, or sorry, not ECDSA, generic Schnorr Frost.
Yeah.
And so like we'd actually have 2 different Frost implementations in our code base because of that.
Okay, got it. So then, so we got, he has a follow-up question here. So after all of that, Chad, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is it to build Schnorr Frost, the general Frost, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I don't think I can answer with any kind of accuracy. I am not a cryptographer. I've never stated that I am a cryptographer. I'm an engineer by heart. So I don't really have a clear sense of it, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I would never want to build it myself. I am just not, equipped to build that. I will openly admit, I would always rely on people who are, right? And so using a library that Coinbase built, because they're, really smart people over there, or Silence Labs, who are, professionals in this area, is much better off than asking somebody like me to build a, or even asking ChatGPT. Like I wouldn't trust ChatGPT to do this. It's too technical. It's too mathematical. The models are not strong enough to do this effectively, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So not yet. Maybe there'll come a day that won't be the case. You can use it, but I would just lean on the pros, which I am not one of them.
And so this is what THORSec, Soda Labs would help us with, right? They'd be able to bridge the gap from the Coinbase library or the Silence Labs library and apply it to THORChain. They would make it work, right?
Yeah. They're much more cryptographers than I am, although not most of them are not necessarily professional cryptographers. There's a deeper understanding than I do. And so we might pull in additional help from another team to be an aid or assist Soda Labs to help them with that process, potentially, maybe. It depends on the maturity of the library. If we have to make edits to it, which I hope not, because I would prefer we just take a standard issue off the shelf, open source implementation of whatever Schnorr or whatever. I hope that's the case. They're investigating that. They're doing research into different libraries and their implementation details, and they're coming back with some results to me. I think like in a week or two.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think we should change subject a bit. Should we talk about the node votes going on?
Yeah, sure.
I think we gotta. So we're still with the TOR Anchor. I haven't looked actually. I haven't checked today, but last I looked, the TOR Anchor, the stablecoin TOR Anchors. There's 3 of them. I think we're still shy, right? We're like 50%, 50 some percent on those. I think
On the TOR ones, yeah, something like
yeah.
that.
I'm surprised why those aren't passing. And this is the thing with votes. Like I said, like I hope the nodes don't think that we like just because there's a vote doesn't mean you have to agree. But if
Yeah,
you don't agree, like let us know why.
yeah,
So that we can fix it or address it or whatever. And I feel like that one's pretty. I'm on Discord looking at the main info trying to find it, but I feel like that's pretty like kind of a no brainer to do. Like I don't know why we wouldn't do it.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's no argument. I've never heard. I don't even. I mean, maybe you could make an argument that you dislike some token, right? Like you think this is a very good token to have in our TOR anchors, but I would always argue that like it's even if it's not a great like stable, it's healthier to have more.
Yeah.
You know, like the more you have, like the stronger it gets, because like the reality is every stable coin out there that's been around for a long enough period of time, all of them have depegged, right? USDC is depegged, USDT is depegged probably more than once. Obviously, UST did depeg by a lot. Like everything does depeg at some point, and then hopefully it recovers, right? But one thing we have never seen in crypto land is all of them depeg at the same time. That's just never been the case. And I would argue is like extraordinarily, extremely unlikely, right? Knock on wood. And so the TOR anchor is basically leaning on this idea that like the stablecoin market as a whole is healthy. If a coin is bad, that's fine. We look at the health of the market as a whole. So the more coins you add, even if they're not the greatest stable coins, that still gives you a better, broader, wider image that gives you more stability. So it's always good to do. I suspect that nodes are just like, you know, they might be burnt out, right? Because we've been asking a lot of the nodes over the last like month or two, and of like dealing with exploits and getting them to like update quickly and vote on this and and like all these things. I don't want to get like too thrashy with the nodes and like tell them to note on all the things all the time. That's a kind of a concern that I have. But at the same time, we also need to like like keep things moving so that we can move along and add new features or whatever. And that's why I've been like, I actually started working on this week about doing a required voting system where once you get for like ADRs specifically, maybe you might extend it to just like general economic Mimirs, but let's just start with something simple as like ADRs in general. And if you get to 1/3 plus one of the nodes voting yay or nay, on an ADR, then it becomes required voting until we reach consensus of some kind, and if you didn't vote, one node might get churned out per ADR that's in flight, right? Effectively, which is generally just like one at a time, or maybe two. And it's just to put pressure on nodes to stay on top of things. And if you get churned out from this or from that, or because you're like a bad node, you got slashes, or because you're aged out or whatever, you can't churn back in unless you've voted on all the ADRs that need to be voted on. And so that does actually mean, when you do that, it does actually mean that eventually, with enough time, every ADR would get yayed or nayed in either direction. Whereas now it could just like sit in limbo for more or less forever. But because eventually everybody churns out because of age or whatever else, and you won't be able to get back in without voting. And so eventually all ADRs will be settled. It might take a year or 2 years in some extreme scenarios, which obviously we don't like, but at least it guarantees that every ADR would be resolved in one form or another.
Yeah. No, I think that actually is pretty good. There's gotta be a penalty, but it also doesn't have to be extreme, right? Like we don't want to like, yeah. So that seems like a fair enough penalty. Somebody had a good idea in the thread about, well, instead of penalizing bad behavior, what if we reward good behavior? So if somebody does vote right away, they get a reduction in slash points or something. I'm like, that's actually not a bad idea.
Yeah,
But
not a
then
bad idea.
somebody replied saying, yeah, but then maybe people just vote just for the sake, just make up a vote type deal just to make a little bit of money or something.
Yeah, you might vote nay and then look into the issue and then make a determination and then vote yay or stay nay or whatever.
Could be the same thing with the churn though too. You might just vote something just to stay.
That's true.
In.
I mean, it depends on when the ADR gets kind of like launched or when we reach that threshold, a third plus one. If it's like right before the churn, just by coincidence, maybe, I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
I think it's one of those things where you just kind of try to see how people, how the behavior is. Right?
Yeah.
And then if people are abusing, I do think our node community is pretty good. Node upright community about
I don't
system type thing. Like everyone's.
Yeah, I agree. Our nodes are overall, they're pretty good. Some are better than others, of course. But governance itself is very hard. And there was an earlier time in crypto history where we thought, DAOs were going to be the end all be all of governance. And in hindsight, not so much, because people just don't pay attention. People just don't vote. And it's the founders who have a lot of tokens, that they acquired, very early on, just end up deciding everything anyway, And so it's like, we actually have, in terms of health, like I don't want to say we are one of the best because I don't know enough projects well enough to say that, but I would say that like when you compare us to other major products, like take, Bitcoin or Ethereum, like Ethereum has EIPs and there's no voting. Nodes don't even actually vote on that, right? There's no actually voting system in place at all. It's just determined by the people who produce the binaries or the full nodes or the validator code that really at the end of the day decides what's actually going to happen and what's not going to happen. And they don't even have Mimirs to flip on and off, features or something like this. They don't, they just force it onto the chain. And then, I guess nodes can choose like not to upgrade to the latest version. That's like, I guess that's the closest thing to a voting system they have. And it's very similar to Bitcoin in some ways in this way. I like the more clarity that we have where we can implement some feature. It's flipped off, it's feature flagged off, and then we can do ADRs, we can vote on it. And that way the development is separate from the governance. We can move forward more efficiently because of that. And then we can just, vote and turn on features and turn off features and or whatever. Like it's a better way of doing it. I would say fairly objectively than the way that Ethereum does theirs, or even Bitcoin for that matter. So I am actually quite pleased with what we do here, but I am requesting something a little bit kind of crazy. I want 2/3 majority to vote on all major changes, which is like kind of a big ask, in a sense, but I want to get there. That's important to get there.
And because everybody, we all want to succeed, right? We all want to THORChain and succeed, be successful, get users adoption. We have to keep innovating, changing, adding, updating, right? And if these things keep getting held up, we're gonna ossify in this half finished state. So we do need nodes to vote to move things forward. So let's go back to this TOR vote, TOR Anchor. Weren't we using TOR just for THORFi, for savers and lending? So now that that's gone, what do we actually use TOR for now? Why would this matter?
That's a good question. We use it for, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is that I want to say transactions used to be priced, or gas used to be priced in room quantity, and now it's in dollar terms or something like this, or maybe not gas. I can't remember which it is off the top of my head. I think TOR is used in a couple other places, but I can't recall offhand what that is.
Okay. But I'm a bit of a clean freak. Mm-hmm. I'm organized, and it's I find in life in general, we leave the little things that maybe aren't a priority, but you leave them, and then you forget about them, and they fester. And it's it's kind of like the admin key. A lot of people thought the admin key was already burned and retired, and we all forgot about it. And then 2 years later, JP used it, and caught everyone by surprise. I feel like it's stuff like the same thing. Like we could, in a year or two, something happens with the TOR Anchor, and we're like, man, if we only had a few extra stable coins on the TOR Anchor, we wouldn't have had this problem, like this unique edge case problem, right? So it's kind of like, fine, we may not necessarily need it now. It's not a big deal now, but just get these things done, cleaned up, is there. And then in a year or two, when something comes up, like, we're glad we had it. We're glad we did this ahead of time. We're proactive, instead of reacting to everything. So like, it's, well, even like the our hack, the GG20, like, we were already talking about moving towards DKLS, right?
Yeah.
And so like, the more we get held up on these things, it prevents us from being proactive to implement new things. And I'm not trying to say nodes prevented DKLS or anything like that, but it's just
No.
it's just this is how it goes. We just stay on top of things and get things moving forward, and we have more time to focus on new things that really do make an impact. So yeah.
It's tough to be honest, because we don't have a massive engineering team as some other protocols do. We don't have a massive treasury that's like hundreds of millions of dollars like other protocols might have. And so we have limited resources and limited time, and we do the best we can with what we have. And I agree with you, like, we want to stay on top of those small things, but it's easy for those things to fall off the radar and kind of get put in the back burner, and then we get fixated on, maybe a new feature or a major bug or exploit potentially, whatever it might be. And it's hard to stay on top of all the things. That's why, it's partially why I have like a weekly meeting with all the engineering people and the entire kind of protocol in some ways. And we go over all the things that's happening on mainnet, all the release information, where the Mimirs are we were currently trying to vote on, all the ADRs we're currently voting on, what is in our future roadmap, what is currently being worked on by this team, that team, and whatever else. And just to keep on top and keep it all documented on a piece of paper that we look at every week. And just to remind, even if we do nothing this week about this topic, we still leave it there, like to kind of constantly, mention it once a week, just so it stays on our frontal lobe in a sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully nodes. I'd say too, nodes, when you're voting, double check your votes. I mean, I've had a bunch of times where I thought a vote was entered and it's not entered properly. So, maybe we do have like several nodes, dozen nodes who think they have voted on the TOR Anchor, but maybe didn't get registered and go through properly. Same be bond providers too. If your node says they've done a vote, double check it, make sure it went through. Okay, well, that's the TOR Anchor. So the other one is ADR 29, the Reshare. I'm trying to see if I can see where we're at.
Last I looked, it was like 50% voted yes, nobody voted no, and we're just waiting for that last like 20-ish no's just to kind of get us over the hump there.
Yeah, and I feel like we address questions in the thread pretty good. But again, if you're a node operator and you're against it, or you don't like your answers, please say something. Let us know.
Or at least vote no. I mean,
Yeah,
at least we know you're not going to vote yes or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. I mean, you can imagine can be a little bit frustrating for some other people in the team just trying to move forward and just be kind of at a standstill for extended periods of time.
I think we're at 58.9% on ADR 29.
Yeah, we're pretty close. We need to get to 67% basically.
Yeah.
Or 68 to be more precise. But like, which we're not that far from.
So I'm assuming it's going to pass eventually.
It should. I mean, to be honest, like, this is actually like, this has like a lot of potential to it, like in terms of generating more revenue for you as a node operator / bond provider. Like, you would theoretically, if this works the way I think it's going to work, let's hope that it does, that like you would make a lot more revenue, right? Significantly more revenue. And so I encourage people to get going so that we can start making more revenue.
I guess if I'm trying to kind of play devil's advocate, I think maybe the main question is, how are we going to, if we give the rev share to a brand new partner, that's easy. We're getting zero revenue from them in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. So that's just additive to us. That should be a no-brainer for people to understand. But if we give the rev share to an existing partner like SwapKit, and okay, we're voluntarily taking a cut in our fees with the expectation it'll actually be a net increase.
Yep.
You think it can work? SwapKit thinks it can work. How are you going to actually track this with SwapKit? How is SwapKit going to track it? Like, are we just going to kind of look at SwapKit's kind of like 30-day, 90-day revenue we've got, just maybe get an average, and then hopefully we can see like a step change?
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you going to
Yeah.
approach that?
I mean, that's the simple way to look at it is that, in a 30-day period, we gave them X dollars and we saw Y dollars, and additional revenue from the previous 30 days. It's not like 100% because, markets change from one month to another month and you could see an up month or a low month. So it's like you can't just do it in like 30 days alone. But yeah, like I think it's more like SwapKit has more kind of view into this than we do as like external to them, because they can see how many additional volume they're getting because they're extending beyond their borders to get a higher percentage of the swap volume for, like, let's take Ledger, for example, right? Because right now they're getting some percentage of Ledger's swap volume. Let's just call it 20%. I don't know what the real number is, but let's just call it 20%. And with this functionality, they can probably get maybe 30%. I don't know, whatever the number is going to be, and they're going to get more revenue. We're going to get more revenue from that because they're increasing their volume, and that additional 10% is inherently going through us. It's not going to go through Near or Chainflip. It has to go through us. And so all of a sudden, like, in this hypothetical scenario, they've increased their volume by 50%, and all that 50% is going to us, right? So that's the kind of the theory behind it, and they'll have more visibility into that than we do. And of course, I'll be in communication with Oleg and the rest of the team, and they can share their figures that they're seeing publicly as well, and we can try this out and see how it works. And if it doesn't work, then it's not that big of a deal. We just turn the feature off and
Yeah, exactly.
carry on.
Like, yeah. So basically, if we're getting, say, pretty consistently 4 or 5% of SwapKit's total volume right now, the last several months, and then we turn on the rev share, and maybe we start getting pretty consistently 15% of their volume.
Yep.
Then we know it's working, because even though, like you said, like, global trading volumes could trend down for whatever reason, right?
Yep.
And so our revenue would naturally go down with that. But probably the best way to measure it, what share of SwapKit's volume are we actually capturing?
Yep.
And then that's probably the best way to do it. So I guess we'll have to trust SwapKit that they're giving us accurate numbers, right? And
partially, but we should be able to see our SwapKit volume increase, right, or not increase, right? Like, there's some information that we'll have, that we can verify. They'll have more data than we can muster.
Yeah, and like, if it's going to be a noticeable drop in revenue to nodes, it should be noticeable for us. It's not working, right? And so then we can turn it off. So
right,
like, if it's going to be that extreme and a bad decision, it should be easy to tell, and then we just turn it off. And but we got to try stuff like this and see how it goes.
It could be a game changer, to be honest with you.
Well, SwapKit's pretty damn excited about it, from what I can tell.
They're very excited about it. And I mean, if they're only excited about it because they believe they can make more money off of it. Which, by the way, they make more money off of it because they get more volume, not because they get the rev share. Like, the rev share is not going to them in their pockets. Yeah. They only make money when we make more money. Yeah. Right. Effectively. Right. In some sense. So, like, they're excited because they think it's actually going to make them more competitive against their other competitors and get a larger volume because of that. And we'll get more volume because of it inherently as well.
Maybe we need to walk people through that. So for us in the rev share with SwapKit, it isn't for us to capture volume from Near or Chainflip or other integrations that SwapKit has. SwapKit's competing with, like, Changely and ChangeNow, Exodus on Ledger, for example. That's the volume going there that SwapKit's trying to capture with this rev share. So they capture that volume. That's going to SwapKit now. That increases SwapKit's volume, but it's all going to THORChain. It isn't being routed through Chainflip or Near. It's going to THORChain.
Right.
And they have to do it through us because that's how they get the rev share to capture the volume in the first place from SwapKit's competition.
Right.
So this isn't like us trying to capture volume already within SwapKit. It's to get external volume. So I wonder if that's something maybe some nodes are having a hard time visualizing. And so
that's also kind of why I've referred to this. The way that I look at it is that it is the dynamic fee model, but just pushed down to the aggregator level instead of the protocol level.
Yeah.
And the further, in theory, the further you get out to the edge, the more data and information, the more signal versus noise ratio increases. The further out to the edge, if you're like the core is like the protocol itself, and you have the aggregator and you have the wallet and like whatever, the further you get out to the edge, the more effective it should be in theory. Yeah. So I'm very interested to see this happen, and I'm hoping we can get at last 10% of nodes to vote.
So let's assume it goes through. It's approved. What do you think we start with on SwapKit for the rev share? 10%, 20%, 30%?
That's I wouldn't go any higher than 30. I think between 10 and 30 is probably a reasonable place to start. Maybe like 20, like right in the middle. It sounds like a good number to start with. You don't want to start too small that's not impactful enough and get like a false positive, right? Or a false negative, more accurately. And you obviously don't want to put like all your eggs in one basket and give them like 50%, right? You start with like something small but meaningful. And I think like 20% is pretty good. Maybe it goes as high as 30%, but 20% is probably good enough. And then once we get some information that's actually really effective, and well, if we push it up to 30, is it a linear like relationship, right? Or is it exponential, or is it exponential like in the other direction, so to speak, or like it kind of falls off?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a question, and I think that's going to require some conversations with them in the sense of like, do they feel like they don't have enough money in the bucket to get all the things they want to get? If that's the case, then maybe increasing the percentage would work. But at the same time, you give them the 20%, and now like we're going to put more money in the bucket because we're making more money from them, right? In a sense, right? So like it is a self-feeding monster in a matter of speaking, or at least partially. And so when we get that 20%, and we're going to be like giving them 30% in revenue, because the 20% we're giving them has increased our volume to give them similar to 30% before the feature was actually implemented. So I think I would lean towards 20% personally. I'm open to hearing other ideas, yours or Randy's or somebody else's, but like my starting position, I would say, is 20% is a reasonable place to start. Small, but not too small.
Yeah. And hopefully, ideally, SwapKit being honest, working with us, maybe to help us tweak it, go down to 15 or 25 type thing, or like, adjust it a few basis points to kind of try to optimize it.
Everything will be data, a data aware, data driven decision making, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So, I'm really excited to see it happen. I'm just waiting for the nodes to get that node vote done.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned the dynamic fee. Any updates on that? How that's going? Is it just still Shapeshift? Have we turned it on for anyone else?
It's still Shapeshift. I'm waiting for 3.20 to roll it out for another affiliate. And I just spoke with the Shapeshift team earlier this morning to kind of get the latest numbers. I got the latest numbers for July. They haven't changed much since the last meeting, but I had that before in July. We're still the top swap provider for that month, which is like, I think we had like 34% of their swap volume. The next one was, I think, 33, which was Chainflip, I think. And for August, it's interesting is that Near is the top, and Bobgate or Bob Swap or whatever it's called is number 2, because they've had some unusual trading, like there's like 1 or 2 trades that were just unusually high for those 2 things. We're still beating Chainflip for the month of August, but I think the overall problem with Shapeshift in general is that like the swap volume is so low on that exchange that it's hard to really get a handle on what's at the value of these numbers, because it's so easy to push it up or push it down. And so once we get to 3.20, and I wasn't going to like launch this experimental feature on like, on SwapKit or one of our larger affiliates. This is start small, right? And make sure the code actually works the way you think it is before you go bigger. So, but once 3.20 is adopted, we can roll it out with, a larger affiliate that has like a good amount of volume to get more data that is more, helpful and more, a larger sample size to use that kind of phrasing to let us know that this is working in the right direction or not. But everything I've seen so far is quite positive, I would say.
Nice. Yeah. We had Oleg join us from SwapKit. Were your ears burning?
Hey, everyone.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, so I was, thanks for having me on. So I was just listening in, and I can maybe share a bit more our perspective and also maybe answer any questions if there are some. In terms of data sharing and transparency, we have already we're in the final stages of testing this. It's an accounting system where we already index all of the transactions that we do through THORChain. So what we do now is we also enrich that data with the liquidity fee or the kickback, that THORChain will be sending back to SwapKit. Let's say we accrue $1,000 or $500. Then our goal will be to spend it all in deeply discounted quotes, where basically we would serve quotes where there is no SwapKit affiliate fee. The goal here is first, so from the perspective of THORChain, of course, THORChain would likely earn more volume, and SwapKit can maybe win more auctions. So THORChain might win more often within SwapKit, but more importantly for us at least is for SwapKit to win against its external competitors. So I see it as if THORChain increases its market share within SwapKit, THORChain is likely to make more money. If SwapKit, if that happens, SwapKit makes the same. Basically, for every dollar that we receive from THORChain, we spend it or we don't get one from affiliate revenue. But if SwapKit can then get a bigger market share within the industry, then everyone makes more money. So that I think is just the win-win. And then in terms of transparency, so the current balance or credit pool would be exposed via a public endpoint. And then the database in which we index all of the THORChain transactions with the liquidity fee and each transaction, basically how much it accrued and how much it has spent, because a single transaction can both accrue liquidity kickback and also spend it with having 0 affiliate fees. And that we would be willing to share with a few actors. And the reason is just that it requires some setup. It requires a Google account. But yeah, everything would be in BigQuery, and we would be willing to share with Chad, the protocol team, or anyone. So in this way, we think it will be transparent and we can make sure the system is really, really good and that, it's very measurable. And my last point would be from the perspective of THORChain. I think the best way for you guys to evaluate this is simply to just take a look at the actual net fee that you earn from SwapKit affiliated transactions and just try to optimize for the biggest number. So if 30% kickback gives you more net revenue than 20%, then just go to 30. And then if you go to 40 and you find that it's like diminishing returns, you might have found the optimal setting for THORChain.
Yep.
Do you have a feel where we should start? Like, should we start at 10, slowly inch our way up? Should we start at 20, kind of get something more punchy?
It's really hard for me to say. I think starting at 20% sounds healthy, but really I don't know. What I can share is that oftentimes THORChain or SwapKit will, so the market is fairly tight where even like 5 bips can make a difference. And in most cases, THORChain, SwapKit will charge between 5 and 10 bips, depending on the integration. So if we can reduce the fee by 10 bips, removing completely the SwapKit affiliate fee, then there are good chances that we can win that. Regardless of what is the kickback, we would aim to do deeply discounted quote. The more kickback probably just means that we would be able to do that and offer that more often. And then even what's really cool about the system is even if we serve a quote where SwapKit earns 0 affiliate fee, we still earn the kickback fee. So we could go into a world where SwapKit just stops charging any affiliate fee for any THORChain quote because the system just feeds itself. Like the system doesn't require SwapKit to charge affiliate fee for the system to work.
Yeah. I like it.
So let me ask this question out of curiosity. Like, when you got, a quote that's being made and you're trying to determine between, like you don't know what the other quotes are, like that you're competing against, like whether it be, I don't know, LayerZero, something, or, some other, interface. Or aggregator rather. So it's hard for you to know that information. So are you experimenting to figure out what that information is, and so that you can take some of their volume, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, of course. So what we often do right now is, let's say we receive a quote request for 0.1 BTC to USDT. And we receive the quote request, but we never receive a swap request. In certain integration, we still have the source address and the destination address. So what we do is we check that source address on chain and we see, okay, in the next 5 or 10 minutes, is there a transaction that matches exactly the quote for which we received something, but we didn't win the auction? And then we measure the actual execution. So we can sort of see what the others are quoting this way. We also have some automatic monitoring. We have access to some data. I can't share everything here, but yeah, this is something that we're very, very active on. The challenge in our industry is that if SwapKit is to take too drastic action without talking to the wallets and the integrators themselves, we will just end up losing if the other aggregators don't follow suit in being more tight with evaluating the difference between quoted and executed. So we're actually trying to work a lot with wallets and give them all the tools and all the information and everything that we've learned looking at this problem so that they can implement what fits their business goals best. Execution is one thing, but then there's also, or price execution is one thing, but there's also the refund rate, the number of time transactions go wrong, the latency or the time to complete the transaction. So price execution is not the only metric that we look at. We really just try to quantify and measure everything that we can, and then each wallet will have different priorities. A lot of the partners or the integrations in the APAC region, they just care about, I want the transaction to go through as soon as possible. They don't really care, or they're very much less sensitive about the fee or the price. But other wallets, they want to get the best price and get exactly what they were quoted. So we're just basically working with any wallet to match what they need.
When you look at the on-chain data, you're looking at the execution prices, right? Or does it actually show you what was quoted for that transaction?
Oh yeah, of course. We track all of that.
But you can see it. Oh, okay. So when other providers are providing quotes, or Ledger, for example, deciding on how to display the quotes, like, do they add in the fee and the spread into the quote, or is it like separate? Like, could maybe, different platforms are going to have different spreads, and then you might have one spread coming in cheap, but they have a much higher fee, and then the user gets charged that higher fee afterwards. Ends up paying actually more in the end, or are they pretty good about combining the fees and the spread into one quote?
Yeah, they really rank the quote in what it is expected to output, what would be the net outcome delivered to the destination address. And that's mostly what they measure. So fee, spread, call it whatever you want. They really just look at the outcome.
It's just all combined. It's all aggregated. So, okay.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So with the bigger wallets, they will tell us, hey, this is how you have to report the fees. So we don't have flexibility. And this is where SwapKit, as an aggregator, we can pick in, make all of the providers look the same. So Ledger has a specific a spec, and they get to dictate how the fees are reported. And we just make sure that all of the providers comply within the structure that they want.
Well, it's pretty cool. If it's only 5 basis points difference between winning or losing a quote, like we should be able to compete, right? And with this Reshare. At least notice something, right? Like it should be.
Yeah, and by the way, it's in like their best interest, them being SwapKit's for us to be successful here. Because if we're not successful here, then we're going to be turning it off. And I know Oleg's not going to like that much, right? So he wants to make sure that it's beneficial for SwapKit, but he also needs to make sure that it's beneficial for us. Yeah. It's a mutually beneficial, symbiotic relationship in some sense. So Oleg, I have a question for you. Like, I'm curious, like, what is the heuristic you guys might be using to like decide, how did you decide when to spend from this bucket of money to reduce your affiliate code or affiliate fee, whatever, and when you not? Like, how do you decide that?
So for now, it would be very naive, and we would just try to aim to spend as much as possible, as fast as possible. So on the data ingestion, would probably have a 5-minute delay, and really the system, we don't need to aim for true zero. Like, it doesn't need to be a perfect balance. SwapKit can owe THORChain $100 for a couple of minutes. THORChain can owe SwapKit a couple of dollars for a couple of minutes. It doesn't really matter, so long as we just try and average around zero. So to begin with, it would be very naive. But then if this works, then of course we would invest more resources, because we would be incentivized to strategize around this to try and, like, is it better to let the credits accumulate a bit more and spend them all when the market is volatile? Is that where it's more profitable to do so? We would have to experiment and invest more resource. For now, it's really just simple. The only caveat that I raise is in the proposal is some commercial agreements don't let us choose or change our fee. The fees are set by the wallet and they are the same for everyone, and we don't have anything. So we don't have any flexibility. So what we do in those cases is there will be some integrations in which THORChain would only accrue, and then some integrations where we would accrue and spend, and we would aim to spend as much as possible. But because I can say that, but within Ledger, we have that flexibility, and Ledger is basically an infinite market. We don't fear that we would end up just accruing and not being able to spend them, just because Ledger is so big of a market that we'll always be able to spend anything that we accrue with all other integrations.
Yeah.
Could you organize it based on swap size? Because like where THORChain tends to win is on the larger swaps, right? And so we don't need to subsidize those trades because we're already getting them. I think we tend to lose out on the smaller size, right? So could you focus the spend on the lower swap sizes to help us try and win those, or would you just be, like you said, it's going to be very simple and basic at first? It's going to kind of apply it to everything evenly.
So what you suggest is definitely the kind of thing that we would look for. We would try to optimize for size and trading pairs. There are some trading pairs that THORChain is just naturally better. Unfortunately, so THORChain used to win all of the big quotes. With the solver market and how it evolved over the past year, I don't have strong numbers right now in front of me, but generally I would say that up to $1 million, the solver-based protocols are generally pretty good. So anything above that, yes, THORChain wins, but then the bulk of the volume is still within like $100K to $1 million for the retail market. Yeah. So we would probably still need to incentivize the larger swaps so that THORChain can win some of them.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
I mean, you could do a thing where, like, if you have, say you have THORChain, Near, and Shape, these are all your partners, swap providers, and one's offering 10 bits, one's offering 12 bits, and THORChain's offering 13 bits, and you could bring the 13 down to 9 theoretically, right? With this, and rather than like the maximum 7 bits down or 10 bits down, whatever your fee is, you could just bring it down by 4 bits, because by that you now have a better price than what you did a moment ago, and now you're more competitive with all your competitors that are kind of to your sides. Is that one additional basis point lower than what you had a moment ago good enough? I mean, it's good enough for us from our perspective, because we're now your top swapper in that scenario, but maybe you need to do 2 bips or 3 bips further in order to get the like kind of more volume from your people that are lateral to you, in a matter of speaking. Does that make sense? Like, instead of just doing the maximum 7 bips, the maximum 10 bips, where the number is all the time, you can do halfway, just because that's going to give you a better price than everybody else. And if you actually are monitoring the execution of everybody else, your competitors, then you can probably even calculate to some degree how many bips down you need to go.
Yep. No, of course. So again, we just want to test out the system, see if it works, and see if it's worth it for us to invest more engineering resources to get it more sophisticated. But of course, our incentives are perfectly aligned. So yeah, I mean, at some point we might even ask THORChain, like, hey, can you guys do this? Or can you, what do you think about that? So we would definitely be collaborative because we just have our incentives are perfectly aligned.
Yeah. Okay.
And one thing on quote competitiveness, we recently announced it, and it's really, really cool to see. THORChain's design for TRON swaps is really, really good. So we recently activated Trust Wallet to use TRON via THORChain. And the reason why it's really good is that most of the solver-based protocols, they have unique deposit channels or deposit channels that don't get reused quite a bit. With TRON, there's a significant activation fee. So whereas because THORChain shares the same addresses, so the inbound addresses, and reuse them heavily, and they change every time there's a churn, which these days is not very often. Well, basically that just means that there's no activation fee paid by the users. So this is a really, really successful activation, and probably the other like CIC, Changely, Change0, all of those other ones, they usually use unique deposit addresses as well. So those are swaps that maybe we won't need to incentivize because THORChain's design is just more compatible or competitive with the chain it's trading on.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, this all sounds very like you don't need to sell me. I you and I think see similarly on this topic, and are both pretty excited about the potentials of this, and it makes a lot of sense for both of us. And which is why I'm excited to give it going. We just need to get that last 10% of nodes to approve the ADR before we can move forward. And once we do, we'll flip you on, and we can start the experimentation and see how effective this tool is as a way of generating more revenue and more volume for both of us.
Of course. And if any nodes have any suggestions, ideas, or questions, just ping me or ping us in either the Telegram chat or the Discord chat. We're really open to feedback and explaining stuff deeper if it's required to get some more votes.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Oleg, would you agree that when we do this, we should know pretty quickly, like within a few weeks, a month, whether it's working or not?
Yeah, I would think so. We have enough volume when all chains are enabled that, yeah, I think the validation period would be as quick as a few weeks.
Cool.
Yep. Let me ask you, Oleg, on a different topic. Like, are you guys interested in the dynamic fee model that we're currently experimenting with Shapeshift at the current moment, but we're going to be expanding to more in the near future? Is that something that you guys are interested in, or do you think that's just not a good fit for your use case?
Remind me, the dynamic fee, is it the thing per trading pair?
Yes, per trading pair, the protocol changes the fee from up or down a number, and then it goes up or down relative to what generates more volume for the protocol versus not on a per affiliate per trading pair level.
Yeah, I mean, do you mainly go up or down the liquidity fee of THORChain?
It's on day one, it starts at like a 1 BIP, right? Which is actually 2 BIP because of double trades, or maybe, yeah. But it goes up and it increases until it finds a spot where it feels it is the most revenue, and then it tries to go down and tries to go up, and kind of probably just bounce around depending upon the scenario of like how much the volume changes, so the revenue changes, and so it should just find the optimal place that generates the most amount of revenue in theory for this affiliate on this trading pair.
Okay. Yeah, I would say I'm definitely more interested in the liquidity fee kickback program than this dynamic fee. Definitely worth trying. I would definitely just try those two in isolation if possible, just so that it's easier to measure the results. So I'm really keen to get started on liquidity fee if that gets voted on. And after a few months, once we've established what works, what doesn't work, then maybe we can start taking a look at this dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I was considering putting you guys into this program maybe last, just because you're one of our biggest, affiliates, and I wanted to slow roll this out, and over time rather than like starting big, starting small and working way up. But I was just curious if that's something that's interesting, but I can understand why the Reshare model is more interesting for your perspective, because you have more control over that and you can utilize it to optimize your own scenario rather than, letting us kind of figure out on the protocol level. And like I said earlier in the pod today, that like what you guys are doing effectively is dynamic fee, right? You're deciding how much fee you want to charge based upon some data or some information. And we're doing the same thing on the protocol level, but because you're closer to the edge, you would just have more real-time information that is more, that is more usable. For us, we have to figure out from the volume of an entire day, which there are lots of different things that can push that volume up or down outside of the feature itself. And so it's harder to get more signal and less noise from our perspective. But for you as an affiliate, you have more information and data to operate off. And so you should be able to have more effectiveness with this, I would argue.
Yeah. But what you're describing is still something that basically you would add the SwapKit affiliate, the TOR name, into the system. It's not something that we can decide per quote with a quote param, correct?
Yes. Well, you can on a quote param in the sense that when you hit the quote API, you have to either give your affiliate, which might be, like for Kenton, it'd be like STO, for example. For you guys, I think it's like _- or something, right? And you can have a different one for a different purpose, and it would just quote differently. It all depends upon the affiliate you're putting into the quote to tell you what the protocol would actually charge for this swap, because you're going through this affiliate on this trading pair, what you're going to actually pay. Oh, 5 bips, 10 bips, 2 bips, 20 bips, whatever it is.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, let's take a look after the liquidity kickback thing.
Yeah. I'm more interested for you guys, especially because of this whole kind of deal we've been talking about. I think it's a better use case of capital, in my opinion. But maybe for other partners, who don't want to utilize this feature, because they can't, because you, as you said earlier, I think maybe Trust Wallet might be an example where you have to take 7 bips. It doesn't mean you can't get dynamic fee for that one, and they get better fees. You still get your 7 bips on every trade as you're kind of obligated by contract or whatever it is. But they get a better price at the end of the day, and we get more volume because of it.
Great. One small thing, while we're talking business here, is there any capacity, or can you think of a way where we SwapKit can report where we think, where we see the most opportunities for THORChain to add liquidity to specific pools? So I want to give you 2 things. So first, there are more and more integrators that are telling SwapKit, hey, we will start looking into time of execution. So with the streaming swaps, if the pool is shallower, that just means that the time to execution will be probably slower. So that means that THORChain might get deranked. If they're looking at time of execution. What's even worse for us is we will have to care a lot about this, because in some integrations, SwapKit is kind of bundled up together. So if we see that, for example, Near can deliver this swap in 5 minutes, but then it would stream 30 minutes on THORChain, even if the pricing is good on THORChain, we might not be able to use it, because overall, we have to consider time of execution. The other thing that I shared with you also is some APAC partners, we have a quote param that is called max execution time. So our integrators can tell us how many minutes they can tolerate for a swap of a specific size. So some integrators use this, and the most commonly used value is 30 minutes. So if the THORChain quote was to take more than 30 minutes, we just don't return it. So that disqualifies sometimes THORChain. I'm not saying this is a huge revenue driver, but in that spirit, I feel like there's a lot of information that we can share, but it's probably useless for us to share it if THORChain can't action on it. But if there's some flexibility on how the POL gets attributed and shifted between pools, there could be some potential for optimization there.
Yeah, so there's a couple of components to this. So there's been talk for a while, and we've been trying to work on this. And I think with 3.20, there's fixing a bug going from economic to operational Mimir, so that we can start taking some percentage of the system income, let's just call it 20% for the sake of discussion, and then we deploy it into various pools. How that's determined is basically looking at the depth of the pool relative to the revenue it generates. So ones that have a high revenue relative to its depth, that's the market telling the protocol, this is a good place to deploy more capital. It's not something that I decide or the developers decide, and kind of fine tune it by humans. It is algorithmically determined in that context. I would suspect that shallower pools like a Solana pool, for example, or maybe some of the Tron pools would be quick to get the liquidity first because they're so shallow that you don't need a lot of revenue to be a high revenue to relative to depth in those cases versus Bitcoin, which is like obviously like the deepest pool. It would take a lot of revenue, a lot of swap volume to equal something in a smaller pool. So I think the smaller pools will naturally get focused on first, like Tron and Solana and Monero maybe and whatever else. Addition to that, like we did just move the rapid swaps down to 3 or up to 3 rather. We can increase that number to some arbitrary number. Like you could throw it to 100 if you wanted to. It could go pretty high. I want to be careful about that. I don't want to like rush into that too much, and especially with the block time issues that we were having earlier this week and last week. I didn't want to put more into the block, right? I just wanted the kind of things to settle first. So we will probably be shifting that up to 5 at some point in the next week or two, I suspect, which will again like drop down our speed. Not to mention that we also have in 3.21 zero conf trading, where specifically from Bitcoin, we start doing the trade as soon as we see the mempool instead of seeing it like on chain, and we don't send out the funds until it gets on chain, and so that we can kind of get rid of that like 10-minute wait time that Bitcoin has. Technically, it would work for other like Doge or whatever, but like it wouldn't be as much value there. But if there are issues that you're seeing, like I would beg and plead you to let me know. The more information I get from you, about this is what I need to see from THORChain, to get more volume. I need this to be faster. I need this to be cheaper. I need this pair to be this. The more info I get from you guys, the more informed I am, the more informed that I am, the more actions that I can take to better our situation, to better suit your needs. So definitely let me know what you're hearing from your clients or partnerships, whatever, and I will do whatever I reasonably can to meet that ask.
Hey, can I add something too? So Chad, I don't know if you remember, but Boone put together an ADR about rebalancing the treasury's LP positions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of positions there's just dead money, right? There's no volume, no pools. So Oleg, to answer your question, I worked with Boone a little bit on this. We just kind of arbitrarily came up with how to rebalance it. But there's like some specific pools where you're like, guys, you got to get this from like 50 grand to 250 grand depth. Let us know. And maybe those are the pools we prioritize to reshuffle the treasury's LP positions into those pools.
Yeah, that's true too. I had forgotten about that. That's another thing that's been on our backlog for a little while. I think for that though, we need to like the treasury's LP positions are actually like frozen, right? That you can't withdraw them for security reasons. We don't really have a general interest in withdrawing anyway. But for purpose of redistribution, that does make sense. And so we have to like migrate all the LP units from the old treasury address to the new treasury address, and then we can do withdrawals. And once we have the withdrawals, we can send back into a different pool.
Are you talking, Oleg? You're muted, buddy.
Nope, I was just in agreement.
Nodding in agreement.
So one thing I think we can share is, and it would be a pretty easy exercise, is we just rank the pools by depth on THORChain, and then I can rank the assets or chains for which we see the most quote volume, and then just try and see the outliers. So I see like Bitcoin Cash is among like the biggest pools still on THORChain. So is Doge and AVAX. So probably AVAX and Bitcoin Cash, really a lot of this capital can be reallocated to Sol and Tron, and it's going to see a lot more volume.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Just send me DMs with this information, and I'll be happy to work with you and see the changes made as reasonably fast as I can.
I'm guessing it's the stablecoin pools we really need to beef up. I think about this a lot, especially the TRON USDT pool. I think it's pretty small, and
probably
because like our biggest trading pairs are like Bitcoin to ETH, right? Because those pools are huge, right? It's like I think Bitcoin's 20 some million and ETH is 15 million or something. But like I think our Tether pool is only like 3 million, maybe 5, and USDC is only a couple million. And then it really tapers off. And so I can't help but think if our stablecoin pools were closer in size to Bitcoin and ETH, we'd see a lot more of those ETH to stables, Bitcoin to stable trades. So I think medium term would be a good goal for us, is to get all our stablecoin pools beefed up pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm willing to bet the algo that we have right now will probably work pretty good for what you're asking for. Like, it'll probably be fairly aligned with what your needs are. I'm willing to bet, but maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out with time.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on. I'll jump back into listener mode.
Really glad you came, Oleg. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us.
That was
awesome,
that was great, man. Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
You
Thanks.
too, man. Yeah. And just a reminder to the community, anybody else listening, everyone's always welcome to come up. Come say hi, ask a question, maybe just have a comment. Right? So I hope everyone knows to feel welcome. Denny, we got to put this in, I think, in the intro. We got to start saying this, reminding people that they're welcome to come up and join. I'm going to do it right now so I don't forget. Maybe you can fill us in, man. Where were you for the last hour?
Well,
What's her name?
Her name is Joelle.
Her name is Joelle.
I was on the space, you guys, with Dash. For those who don't know, Dash is coming on Saturday. We're having a podcast with them. So it's kind of like a mutual thing that we did. And he had a topic specifically for THORChain, and I spent the last 2 hours before coming on chatting all about THORChain, asking questions, talking about the ethos and what we believe, and it was a very great conversation. I think I did an okay job. Really, I think Paul from Edgewalt was really awesome. He basically said that THORChain and my protocol really stand apart when it comes to what a DEX is. Right. I mean, we made no compromises. So I did really good. So I talked to Familiar Cow over there. He's doing well.
Oh, nice.
We talked about Near Protocol. That was great. So shout out to Familiar Cow. And, we were going back and forth on our differences. And he's still very friendly and complimentary towards THORChain. Obviously, he's been with us for like 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. And so it was nice hearing from him. And just shout out to Near Protocol for a really great engagement. I also talked to Vinny over there. So that was great. I had a great conversation. I loved it. A lot of new followers, and thanks guys for following, and thank you for following the THORChain account. I really appreciate it as well. So that's it. I don't know, since I'm joining late, I don't want to ask questions and rehash old material. That's really mean for the listeners here. There is someone there who has a question right there on any update on Monero. I don't know if you guys already gave an update on Monero, but I am seeing that.
We didn't actually.
Yeah,
okay.
So Monero. Let me do it. Monero has been tested as part of the 3.20. From what I understand, everything seems to be working good. The biggest inhibitor right now, like we still haven't rolled out Zcash yet, and that's largely because the churn has been kind of broken for a while now, and we have to churn in order to roll out new chains and all that kind of stuff. So once we get 3.20 out, once the churn starts churning again, we can start rolling out Zcash. We can start rolling out Monero, I think, quite soon after that. I've actually been working on a change locally that removes the churn from the chain adding process, like removes that as a requirement. It won't work 100% of the time. Like Monero, you couldn't do that because you have a new cryptography that has to generate a new private key, and you have to do that with a churn. But the vast majority of our chains don't require that kind of thing, and so we should be able to, in theory, to add new chain in between churns, right? And so I kind of suspect that like churns are going to become more fragile with time, just because we're adding more chains, and with every chain, there's more opportunity for, like, even if it's not even us really, like Litecoin's having an issue. Solana almost halted yesterday, right? They had an issue where there's something like 30% of their stakes tokens got like kicked out in like 5 minutes or something, like some issue, and they got really close to halting the entire chain just like yesterday or the day before, whatever it was. And if that were to happen, then we can't churn because Solana, we have to move all of our funds, right, from address A to address B, right? And we can't do that if they're halted, right? So like we're reliant on more and more chains, and the more chains you're reliant on, the more opportunity that one of them is broken in one form or another. Or and on the other side of the equation, like we have more code, right? And, and there's more code, more opportunity for bugs or issues, more nuances with the individual behavior of each individual chain. And so like, as we add more chains, it's going to become increasingly more difficult to have a smooth operation in terms of chain churning all the time. And so I suspect that that's going to become even more fragile with time. And because of that, I want to get ahead of it so that I want to remove as many things as we reasonably can out from behind the churn. And, one thing might be adding new chains. Another thing might be, I think like when you do like a make pause or make resume gets reset on per churn, but maybe we should just kind of statically just say like every 3 days, whether we churn or not, just reset it. Like there might be a few other things I can't remember off the top of my head, but like, I kind of want to get rid of the churn in the sense of being a blocker for all our other operations of the chain and swaps and whatnot, so that we can become just like not less reliant on the churn being smooth in order for us to move forward with adding, a new chain.
Nice.
Yeah, I think about that a lot actually. And I did have a question on that, Chad. Is there any logic, because churns make it, like, let's just say we had 10 more chains just right now, it's magic wand. Does it make sense to make churns more infrequent, like every 7 days to your example?
Yes. I mean, to be honest, we've talked about doing every 7 days, like like years ago. And to be honest, I think I probably sit in a place where I'm like, I'm fine every 7 days, especially if we get rid of the requirement to churn to add chains. Excuse me. I've been fighting off something. Then I get even more for it. Like, and it costs the protocol money every time we churn, because we have to spend much gas to move all the coins from point A to point B. And that can be kind of expensive. I don't know how much the protocol spends per churn. I couldn't even estimate it for you. I suspect it's like 1,000 or 2, if I would take a kind of guess out the crack of my butt. But churning less often is kind of a good thing. The negative is that like you kind of, I've always liked that the churn is a form of proof of being able to move the funds, right? And so we prove that we can actually move the funds when we move all the funds, which is actually kind of like valuable in its own. It's like a public proof that we still control the funds. We haven't lost the keys. We are not able to do key signs or whatever, that kind of thing. But we could change it to 7 days or something even longer. But then we have to think about, how we governance works in terms of like churning out nodes that are by age. We might want to increase the number of nodes that churn out for age if we go too long on the churns, for example. They require a lot of thinking in kind of like game theory to kind of think of what would make sense in that scenario. But like, yeah, I'm open to lengthening it. I mean, we can put to 1 week and not really change much else, and I think that would be probably a good move overall.
Yeah, memory serves me. D5 Sammy was banging the drum for 7 days a few years ago. I don't know if he still feels strongly about it or not, but
yeah, I'm fine with that. I think it makes some sense. I mean, also another negative is that like, sometimes like the recent exploit we had for GG20, it required like a lot of key signs for that person to like bit by bit get enough information to be able to figure out what their actual private key is. And so the longer you churn, right, the more time there is between those 2 points and the more key signs are going to be to give you more opportunity. So if we churned every day, for example, that would be more secure because you would have less time to figure out what the private key is until a new private key is generated. And now you're like kind of shit out of luck, We've talked about the idea of doing what's called like a reshare, which basically means the private key and the addresses are staying the same between the 2 points, but every day, and this is like a 7-day window, every day between the 7 days we do a reshare, meaning that you're changing what your share is, but you're still having the same private key and the same addresses, but everybody's changing what their share is. And all of a sudden, when you're trying to build up that knowledge of what the private key is, you're doing it through a share that, the share is no longer even valid anymore. I got to start over again on every day. I got to start from 0 again. we've talked about that recently in some meetings about making that change, which is kind of a good idea and a bad idea at the same time, because by doing that, you're also creating a new part of cryptography that you're not touching now, that you're now going to be touching. And so what if there's a bug in that cryptography? What if there's a bug in that implementation of that cryptography of resharing? So you're kind of increasing your surface area and a little from one perspective, but you're decreasing it in another way. And it's a little bit debatable about is the ROI there or not? And I think some people might reasonably argue that it is, and some people might reasonably argue that it's not. And that's something we're going to be talking about within the security team and myself, and the rest of the devs, of course, about whether that makes sense for us or not in terms of like redesigning how our cryptography even works underneath it all.
That's very interesting. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear more on that later. Maybe we should get the cryptography boys back on here. I love talking with them. We had the one podcast with them. I thought it was so awesome. It was really cool having them. I think that'd be a great topic. I did have a question. Go back to Monero a little bit, because it's something I mentioned on the space. So with Monero, when you send real Monero, there is, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's a 10 block wait time that becomes frozen. So I think it's about 20 minutes before that same Monero can be sent again. How do you foresee that, the behavior of that on the pools on THORChain? Do you foresee that being a problem? Do you think we've adequately addressed it now, or what do you think?
It's hard to say. It certainly could be a problem, and it's something I'm consciously aware of and actually concerned about. The worst case scenario is all of our UTXOs that we have for Monero are in that 20-minute window, and we basically can't sign up on transactions for, a maximum of 20 minutes. Likely it's closer to 5, because to get every one of those UTXOs to be like at the same minute is quite unlikely, but I guess theoretically possible. So we might need to change the UTXO consolidation logic for Monero specifically. For right now, I think it works the same as Bitcoin, and maybe that's good enough. Maybe it's not that big of a problem, but it could be an issue. And if it is, the UTXO consolidation logic would just be like, we're only going to, instead of proactively consolidating UTXOs, which is what we do for Bitcoin and other kind of UTXO based chains, we would just consolidate upon where we only use a maximum, I think it's like 15 or 20 UTXOs. We have like a maximum set that we can use to do an outbound transaction. If the 15 or 20 UTXOs, the value of that is not large enough to do the outbound transaction, then we consolidate those. And that becomes the oldest, and then it becomes the newest, and then we have another 10, 15 or 20, wherever the number is here. Okay, we look for that, and we consolidate there. So eventually you get to the point where you get to the place you need to get to be able to sign the outbound transaction. But you only consolidate when you have to, so that you have as many UTXOs as you have, in a line, like this is the newest and this is the oldest, and you spend from the oldest to the newest. And hopefully you just never get to the newest. Like we just never get to the front of the line, in a sense, because you're just constantly spending from the back. But it is possible. It may happen. If it does happen, outbound transactions will just be delayed for a little bit, but they'll still happen. It's not like that'll be like locked for days or something like this, I don't think. And so, but if that is an issue, we can make a code change. It doesn't have to be a part of the a dot release. It can happen in a patch, which means we can just push it out whenever we please, like really quickly and really easily. And so we can make that change, push it out to the nodes within a short period of time, and fix it. But like I said, I don't know if that's going to be a problem, and I'm hesitant to spend engineering times to fix a problem that we don't know is a problem yet, especially when we know the system we have now works quite effectively. And if we do see there's a significant amount of problem with this, then we can just, allocate the engineering time to fix it, push it out quick, and deal with it. Like we said before, when Monero goes out, it's going to be a new beast. It's structurally different than every other UTXO chain we've ever seen. So we expect there to be issues or complexities, and especially in those first few weeks. And we'll be pushing out updates anyway, likely to fix X, Y, or Z. And we might just throw into the mix this kind of patch as well.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier about describing XMR as a soft launch, because that's kind of what's going on. We're learning a lot. You can't replicate mainnet, so it'll be a really interesting to see how it works. So I'm so excited, man. I'm so pumped. guys, I was on a space. You guys probably talked about 3.20. Sounds like it's getting pretty close. Is that right? Is my understanding
Yeah,
correct?
as I mentioned earlier, like we'll be starting the vote to like approve yay or nay this thing probably like today or tomorrow, and so that will be rolling out in a week at most too.
Yeah, Denny, you have to go back listen to the recording.
I know. I don't want to duplicate material. I know. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. That's all right.
I know.
That,
Cool.
that was for everybody that was sleeping earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Well, great, guys. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about? Again, I don't know what was discussed beforehand, so I don't want to. If I know you're sick, Chad, go ahead.
We covered a lot of ground.
Great.
I'm happy to keep this, nice and short relative for us. I don't know if there's anything else you want to go over, Chad.
Yeah, there's something I wanted to bring up, and I'm curious to get like your guys' feedback and anybody from the audience that wants to kind of kick in their 2 cents. I was having a conversation with a protocol the other day. I won't name them for right now, but and they do like privacy trades, and they do what I consider to be more like small p privacy, right? Meaning that it's private. Like privacy is a spectrum of like how much privacy do you need, right? Who has how much work is needed to break the privacy, right? Like Monero and Zcash and Tornado Cash would be like, big P privacy that's like maybe even protective on the government level, although maybe the governments have broken all of those things. I don't even know, but that's certainly possible. But it's probably one of the more stronger things that exist in a sense. And then there's smaller ones too, like, if you want to protect your transactions from like the guy you buy a hot dog from on the street, it's like you don't need like government level, right? So you can't really do big P privacy on THORChain because the inbound and the outbound's in clear text. Whereas in Monero or Zcash land, you're going from privacy address to privacy address, and there's a whole like internal system in place to like of near zero knowledge proofs to like do all that, and you can't do because we're public on both sides. It makes it basically impossible or very close to it. But I wondered to myself, because after speaking to this team, they make, they charge like 120 bips on their trades, just by adding a layer of privacy that's small p privacy, meaning that if they or whatever got queried by the FBI, like, hey, who is this person? Where's the inbound? Where's the outbound? They would just give up and that's public information. I'm not like, dox them in any sense or form, but like they're public about that. So it's like, it's good privacy. And if you think about it, like most people who want privacy for not necessarily from government, but from just like the general public, for buying a hot dog and hot dog stand, maybe your payroll, maybe, whatever, right? Like kind of smaller things. And people who need like government protection might be like, people committing fraud or something. I don't know, like more significant things. Sorry. So my question to you guys is like, if we were to build into THORChain privacy into the chain itself, but it would be small p privacy, not big P privacy, meaning that all the nodes would have the information to know the to and the froms, right? But the public wouldn't know the tos and the froms. And if the FBI, was irate and they wanted to know this transaction, where did it go? They could talk to any node provider, and any node provider would, oh, here's the answer to your question, right? This address, whatever. The benefit of that is that we could offer privacy and we could charge more for that, right? 120 bips or whatever the number bips might be, and generate significantly more revenue. From what this conversation I had, is they kind of insinuated that like usually when a protocol integrates with them and what they're doing, about 14% of their volume goes through them. And so you can imagine, a 3, 5, 6x increase in revenue for that 14%, which is what, like approximately like 50 to 100% increase in revenue generation for the protocol in this hypothetical scenario. And so I wondered to myself, like, if we came up with an idea of how to achieve privacy on THORChain in a small p privacy way, is that valuable? Is that worthwhile doing so? Or is that not,
I think so.
I wonder to get your guys' views on that.
Yeah. I think privacy on the blockchain level that's going to become more and more of a thing. And I actually think institutions are going to be driving that because they don't want to have everything they do public, right?
Right.
So like that
Institutions
Canton,
are a big driver of this. Yes.
yeah, Canton network, it's all private, right? Now a lot of these, I wouldn't be surprised if stable coins are going to become more private. They're all going to have back doors, just like you said. If the FBI comes knocking, they'll give it up
Right.
willingly.
Yeah.
But at least from the average Joe, there'll be some protection.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to become more standard, more normal. I think it'd be great for THORChain to do that at the blockchain level. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Denny?
I think I agree with Kenton because privacy obviously is well, just what happened with Trezor, right? Trezor, I don't know if you guys heard, but Trezor, they didn't leak any data, but the distribution network leaked data of people who received treasures, phone numbers, email addresses, everything. And it just makes sense to be private from the average Joe to Kenton because the average Joe can be dangerous. This is not wanting to necessarily conceal from the government. So yeah, I think that's a definitely thing. And if you charge a premium for that service, I'm assuming that's where this is going, right? You'd have this privacy that's toggleable, and you would charge additional fee for more revenue.
Right.
Sure.
You would have an additional fee on top, whatever that fee might be.
Were you thinking about do you implement this other protocol, or you just copy and paste what they're doing?
No, it wouldn't be copy and paste. It wouldn't be practical for us to copy and paste because they're using centralized entities to achieve the outcome that they're trying to achieve. So it wouldn't be practical for us to do that. We'd have to think of some other methodology. So I've been thinking about it for the last 12 hours, 24 hours, and I have some concepts of a plan, if I can borrow a phrase from Donald J. Trump there. But so I don't really have a fully thought through, implementation design, but I have some ideas. But I'm curious, so if it is something that would be of interest, I don't think I would be willing to do like a mixer thing. Like we could build a mixer into THORChain where you swap into a mixer, right? The output token gets put into the mixer, and then you come back the next day or 2 days later or whatever, and you take your mixer money out and do that. I would be hesitant to do that just because the regulatory around building something like that is really not clear, and I'm just not willing, for the sake of my daughter's well-being, put my own life in that kind of direct risk in that sense. I have to be concerned about my little girl and all that. And so I don't think I'd be willing to do something like big P privacy, at least not in the current sphere of regulation and administrations and whatnot. Hopefully that'll change over time, and I can reevaluate things then. But I do think it's still valuable for a lot of people to want to have privacy in a more smaller way, in a simpler way. And I think the great example that I sometimes think about is that if you were able to buy, something on Amazon, paper towels, whatever, a TV, whatever, and you buy with Bitcoin, and then what happened to Trezor happens to Amazon, and they leak, or maybe an internal leak or whatever, and they know your address because they shipped you some paper towels or a TV, and they know your Bitcoin address, and that has 100 Bitcoin in it or something like this or whatever, right? Then you become a target, and they know where you live, they know where your address is, they know where your crypto addresses, your physical addresses, and they put those two things together, and oh shit, now you're a target, right? That sucks. And so to be able to buy something on Amazon in a private way like that, that doesn't leak the information to Amazon or to anybody for that matter of, what your address is that paid for that paper towel, that has real value to it. And, in our modern society, going up to the government level and protecting against government is another thing. And there's use cases there as well, legitimate use cases. And I don't mean committing fraud, but I mean tyrannical governments that are trying to use and abuse their citizens and stuff. There actually is legitimate use cases for that as well. But that just gets too hairy too fast, and it can be quite dangerous, not just for me as a developer, for node operators as well. So if we do this could mean another source of revenue, which is obviously we're interested in. The two main KPIs that I think about the most really is how to get more volume, how do I get more fees, right? More revenue. And this is one way to generate more revenue. It could be a significant amount of revenue to kind of generate more income for every node operator and so forth and so on. So that makes sense to me, but I wasn't sure if there's a different mentality that the community has.
Well, we do have a contrarian view here. I'll put it from Dead Halfling here. So it sounds like added code complexity for no real benefit. And I think that just goes to the argument that there will not be a lot of adoption. That's making the argument there won't be adoption. So it's code complexity for no real additional revenue, which could be possible. Sure, possible. The way I'm thinking it is, I don't know what idea you have, but I would think, obviously everything right now, as it stands, if you do a regular swap on THORChain, everything, it's on real layer 1, so everything's obviously, you can tell in Block Explorer, the memo tells you exactly what's going on. I'm assuming this would have to be some sort of like memoless implementation where, obviously you would see Bitcoin go to the vault, but thereafter, the only way you would be able to determine what happened is you would need the internal logs of a node operator. I'm assuming.
Right. You would have to generate a new private key that's not like an Asgard or a vault. That is probably going to be like DKLS, and it generates an address with a pub key, and then you can encrypt your message or your memo basically with the pub key of this DKLS address, right? And then the nodes can decrypt it because they have the private key to that pub key, and then they can see what was inside the memo, right? But nobody but everybody else in the world would just see an encrypted kind of piece of text, right? And so that's at least partly how that would work. I mean, the question that the individual is asking is kind of a fair one of like, it would be more complexity, absolutely true in terms of code complexity. And is the ROI there? How important is privacy in today? Like how much demand is there for it? Maybe we'll find out the answer to this question with Monero, right? When Monero gets added, we'll see how much volume happens with it, which I suspect will be a lot, like relative to other chains. And so that will be kind of an indicator that privacy is kind of highly valued. And this team that I was recently talking to with that 14% number, they're insinuating that it's actually quite significant, in terms of what, from their experience and the other people that are the projects that they've integrated with, that it is significant enough, and they're making a good amount of money because of that. So I could be wrong, and there's not much demand for it, but I don't.
What if you build it and we throw it on Maya protocol, see what happens? I mean, if we as a test net, would that make sense?
I mean, you could, but it wouldn't be like.
I guess the quotes would be different. Yeah,
the quotes would be different. They have less liquidity. They have less a lot of things. But the engineering time would be the same. And if we find after adding this feature, maybe 6 months later, it's like doing nothing and blah blah blah, we could just make the choice to decomment, right, and say we're going to flip this thing off, and then we're going to make the code change to like rip out all the code that we added, which wouldn't be hard. That's like not even hours worth of work,
If people are nervous, and I was thinking if there's like some serious exploit or bug that we're introducing, put on my protocol might be. I mean, I'm not saying we throw my protocol to the wolves, but I'm saying maybe that's the safer option.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you can make the same argument with every code change, right?
True.
Throw it on Maya first, and then I mean, some things like I'm actually for that. Like, we've talked about rolling out DKLS on Maya first, just because they have less liquidity, and it's a large orchestration happening, and it's complicated, and it's kind of either you make it or you don't kind of thing in some ways. And features, though, I have a little bit of a different opinion on, at least from my own 2 cents. And exploits would be relatively small for this kind of thing, because it doesn't really add any new functionality in the sense. It just adds an encryption on top of what already exists. And so even if you had a malicious something in there, you're still just executing swaps like everybody else right now. So the opportunity for exploits is relatively small, but not zero, but relatively small.
Well, and I would be confined to the size of the swap being performed if there was any exploits. I would think maybe. But I mean, hey, Chad, once you do what you want to do with like Reshare and all this stuff, like I want to keep you. I don't want you to get bored, bro. So build it.
For me, it's less about being bored and more about like how can I add significant value? Not just add value, but how can I add significant value to the protocol right? By adding Reshare, by adding dynamic fee, by adding, maybe it's encryption, maybe it's Monero, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Like, I'm always looking to like, how can we change the game, and that includes, like, we were just talking to Oleg a little bit ago, and Oleg was like saying, how do I communicate with the team about, places where I see you guys can do better by adding more liquidity to the, TRON pools, for example, he was talking about. I'm like, great. I love to hear that stuff. That's great feedback from, one of our most valued, affiliate partners. Like, please let me know this information, and then I will get right on it to the best of my ability and, improve our situation, because we need more liquidity in the TRON thing or whatever, right?
Yeah, I loved Oleg coming on. I thought that was a great segment with him. Shout out to Oleg. That was really awesome, and I love that back and forth you, Kenton, and Oleg had. I think that was awesome. So, I'm for the idea. What do you guys think? Let us know. Put it in the comments or in the Telegram. Have questions. What do you think? Should we build this thing? I think it's a good idea. I think it's worth a shot. So let us know. Chad, go ahead.
I'll keep cooking on it then in the back of my mind to see if I can figure out a way to do it. It's very hard to do. It's actually very, very complicated, and I don't even really know how it would be feasible in our case. To be honest, I have to spend time noodling on it in a sense. But I have some concepts and some interesting ideas, but nothing I feel strong enough that I can talk about it publicly quite yet. But I'm still I'll noodle on it. If there's interest in it and people agree that this is a direction that makes sense, then I'll keep kind of putting it in the back of my brain and trying to think about a good way of implementing it.
Node operators, BPs, or node operators, I should say, make relay. Let Chad know. Are you interested? Get involved. Give him some feedback. Yeah. Just like Oleg came onto our show and gave Chad feedback in real time. That was sick. I love Oleg for doing that. Thank you, Oleg. That was great. Okay, Chad, is there anything else at all? Any other ideas you were thinking about? Any other topics to discuss?
There probably is, and I'm just not thinking of it right now, to be honest. But that's probably it for now.
Okay, well, hey, thanks for coming on for Thor's Day. I know you're not feeling well and you're technically on vacation, so that's really awesome, man. It's really cool. Love it. That's great.
Appreciate it.
Kenton, did you have anything else, brother?
I'm good, man. No, I think it's great. I'm happy to wrap it up if you guys are.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's wrap it up, you guys. Just a reminder, everybody, for THORChain data and insights, please follow at Ray Analytics on X. He does written recaps of these podcasts. I'm going to need to read that because I missed the first freaking hour. What a loser I am. So I'm going to be looking at that, Ray, or I'll try and watch it later, I should say. And always remember, you guys, the views expressed solely of the hosts and guests. Any action taken based on this information is at your own risk. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and the THORChain community does not endorse or condone any illicit activity of any kind whatsoever. This Saturday, we're going to have Joel from Dash on the show. I cannot wait to talk to him. He has a lot of cool privacy things. It's going to make I'm guarantee it's going to make people bullish on the Dash integration of THORChain. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Joel on that. Really, really awesome. And I think that's going to wrap it up, you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us today, guys. And we will catch you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.